Hey, y'all. I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, not another podcast. And I agree. I'm typically that person that doesn't listen to podcasts either. But my name is Will Johnson, and I'm here to bring something a little different for you. This is the At Home-ish podcast, creating spaces where we belong. Welcome to the At Home-ish podcast, creating spaces where we belong. We are now joyfully at episode 10. I know we hit double digits. It's so amazing. And I have another guest with me who I'm so excited to have, our wonderful mayor, Linda Redmon. Can you please take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience?
Oh, thank you so much, Will, for having me here today. And I'm so excited. Congratulations on reaching episode 10.
Thank you.
It's a lot of undertaking that you're doing. How would you like me to introduce myself? What do you want me to say?
We'll talk about work, but I really want to know, who are you as a person? What should we know about you?
Okay. Well, as a person,
Yes.
I consider myself to be a public servant. So that's kind of what's always driven me in my life to do the things that I've undertaken. So, I've been a community volunteer for, decades. I started when I was a teenager, and I've continued doing that. And sort of career choices that I've made have all been geared toward what can make a difference in someone's life today. So I think that's kind of the kernel of who I am.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I feel like in hearing you vocalize that, I see that in you,
Well, thank you.
When I see you around the community, it's like you always bring such a positive energy, and people want to be around you. And you seem like you really have a heart for the work. It's not like, other people that I may have seen in spaces where it's like, okay, well, this is just a job and I'm doing this. But it's like, oh, no, that's our mayor. That's our person. She takes care of us.
You kind. But I see that in you, too. I know that you're always out in the community trying to make a difference, trying to make those connections, trying to do the work, through the relationships with people.
Oh, so absolutely. Through relationships.
I appreciate that in you.
Yeah. And I appreciate that in you. we model it for each other. So that's right. Awesome. But, of course, I had to go back and look through your profile a little bit on the website, do my homework. And so psychology, you had some background with psychology. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that.
Well, I'll say that it came from an interest. My father had issues when I was growing up with mental illness. So it came from that personal interest to try to understand more, how people and families were impacted by that. And then to try to use my experience to do something more with it. And I did research first in psychology with schizophrenia and things like that. And then I went on to actually work with a lot of gang kids in the Los Angeles area. And that was really good work, but it was really hard work. And I couldn't really continue with that. It's a big, it'll really cause you to burn out because you're seeing some really negative things, some positive things too, but overall it's very, very hard. And eventually I decided I wanted to go on into the medical field. Okay. And so I sort of pursued that, and I'm not doing that now, but but I did. So sort of those helping professions.
That's awesome. So I'm curious now. You definitely sparked my interest with the LA scenario. When were you there?
So I went to undergrad at USC from 88 to 92. So my commencement ceremony was almost canceled because of the riots. Right. So it was a very surreal experience to be surrounded by fires and smoke and stuff as we're counting down the hours to, the commencement walking, and to see the National Guard patrolling our commencement exercises. It was just a very, very strange time, very tense, but at the same time, very educational about seeing other people's long-lived experiences and how that was really different from what I grew up with, and that I needed to understand that better to be more present and active in the world. I needed to understand what other people were dealing with.
And where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a not so little town, even though I think still thinks of itself as a little town called Bakersfield in California.
Familiar.
So, Yeah. Everybody says, "Oh, I've been through there." And I tell them it's a good idea. Just keep going. But no, it's a really dry, hot area, is very agricultural. It's also very oil focused. And it was also a kind of a hard place to grow up. My mom is an immigrant from Thailand. Mm-hmm. And I always sort of felt like an outsider. Mm-hmm. And I know that my mom also did. And she also experienced, discrimination while I was growing up, and harsh words, and people would throw things at her when she was walking down the street, stuff like that. So that sort of colors my experience of what it was like to grow up there and to live there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that too, because I think sometimes, as adults in our professional roles and people see us, they don't know where we've been and what we've been through. Mm-hmm. And so to think about your time in LA, the story you're sharing with your mom, about your dad, it's like, all of the lived experience that you have that's so relevant to the work you do, and greatly appreciate it. When you're sharing about that time with the riots in LA, I remember I was a senior in high school, and I was across the country in Atlanta.
Yeah. But
we also had rioting in Atlanta and several other cities. And so when I think about, what it was like after the Rodney King video where he was beaten by the police, the verdict, and then the riots, that was a time in my life specifically where the life expectancy for African-American men wasn't very long.
Right.
I reflect on when I was in high school thinking, wow, well, I just need to get to graduation and not really having a clear idea of what came after that, because, the counselors would say, one of you is going to be successful. One of you will end up in prison. One of you will end up dead. And it's like, that's wow.
Yeah. It's not very good odds, is it?
It's not.
And what is it giving you? What kind of hopes is it giving you or dashing in you when you hear that? And then what are you able to envision for yourself?
Right.
And that was something that I dealt with when I was working with the gang affiliated kids, that there were only certain things they could really see themselves being.
Right.
And one of the most successful, at least, in terms of income and things like that, and power in society, because really young Black men at the time didn't really see that they had power in society, especially when you see things like the Rodney King video. Right. So how could they grasp some kind of financial independence and some kind of actual status or power in their society, in society as a whole? And unfortunately, gangs were one of the ways that they had access to. How do you combat that when you're working with them to try to get them out of that thinking, that situation? It's really difficult, because they're just like me coming in trying to talk with them. I really couldn't understand what their worldview was, because I hadn't been steeped in that. And I could try to understand it, but living it day to day, growing up where it's imbued in your bones.
Yeah.
I could not understand it the way that they did.
Yeah. And that's very insightful, because I even think about, as being an African-American man, there may be people who look at me and say, oh, well, you can connect with these kids. And I have to say, I was born in the inner city in Atlanta, and my mom moved us out of that environment at an early age. So I also did not grow up in that environment. And it's very challenging for me to really understand, the attraction for that, and that being the symbols for success. But as you're mentioning, that's what they see. So that's what they strive for. And if we talk about inclusive community, that was the opportunity that was available to them, regardless of how detrimental it may have been to their health and to their future.
Yeah. And it was really sad too. A lot of them, they saw their dads go to, jail, prison. And to a lot of them, that was a rite of passage.
Yes.
And that just broke my heart at the time, thinking that they really just expect that. We were just talking about what can you see for yourself as your, your outcome in your life. And they were seeing step by step, and that was their next step after their teenage years. It was going to be prison or jail of some kind. And then they're going to figure it out after that, what comes next,
Right.
depending on how long they were in and what connections they made and all. It just is a totally different worldview and framework.
For sure. And one of the saddest conversations I remember having with a student, this would have been in about 2015, I want to say. But I remember talking with some students in class, and one of the kids was like, hey, Mr. Johns, can I ask you a question? And, I don't want to be too personal, but hey, how many times have you been to jail? And
oh my gosh.
right.
Okay.
And I had to look at him like, never. Like, do I need to find some wood to knock on? Because I haven't, I've not had that experience.
Yeah.
That's not even something that's on my radar of, well, at what point will I go to jail? It's like, so it's so interesting. Like you're saying with that, the whole concept of a rite of passage where, oh, my dad was in jail. My uncle was in jail. My aunt was in jail. Maybe mom was in jail. My brothers, sisters were in jail. It's just something that constantly happens. And
yeah,
that was, I think, one of the things that really resonated with me when I saw psychology on your bio, where it was like, what is it that we really need to look at or implement at whatever age to get out of this cycle that we're in? Because when I think about some reading I did on the gangs as they rose up in the late 60s, and gangs were around before that, we know, but the ones that came out of the post-civil rights era, it's like, wow. So they didn't have opportunities, like we're saying. They were looking for ways to take care of themselves and their families. And there were even some during that time period where it was about, well, we're just going to go down to the park and fight. But then it evolved into to the gunplay and the other criminal activity. And it's like, so we know how it started. How do we work to unravel that? Yeah.
It started with West Side Story, and then it went to,
oh, yeah. So way back before the 60s.
Psychology looks at like sort of the individual internal sort of workings. And then there's sociology that looks at how, people are interconnected and how systems in society work. And so even though I was working with, these kids as a counselor, really what needs to happen is more of a sociological approach. Like how do the systems impact what happens individually to these kids? And it's talked about in, I guess, sort of research settings and things like that. But I feel like there's so much that could happen in the world. And one of the things that in government say that we can do is to try to address, patterns of inequities and try to more sociologically impact the well-being of members of our communities.
Yeah. I was going to toss the question at you, like, well, how does that look?
Still figuring that out,
Right.
Like, what is that? I mean, one thing is we have to understand who's in our communities, like, because I only have a certain reach, right?
Right.
So who's in our communities and what sort of structural things are impacting them? That's what I have to work on. But then I can talk with other people and other governmental entities or other groups that are working, whether they're nonprofit groups and things like that, that are working to try to impact change. And there are advocates that go to like the legislature and say, here's, statewide, we need to look at structures and here's how we can have beneficial impact on different groups that are either marginalized or they've had power removed or they're being held back from being able to access services or the structures of power, things like that, and address it through legislation at the state level. There's so many different layers. So for me, it's just, what are we doing here in our town that is supporting or hindering the people within our community? And it's still, even though that's like a very small sphere of influence, it's still really complex. And there's still a lot of stuff to try to work on.
Yeah, because I even think, still going back to that, the psychology aspect, what are the things that we're doing to take care of ourselves as individuals to make sure that we have what we need, taking on the right thoughts, the right actions, right attitudes. And I used to have a sign outside of my classroom that said, peace begins within and grows. And so when I hear you talking about our local community, if each individual can kind of set their sights on what it is that they want to be and how they want to be present in the world. And more people are doing that within a community. And you got your community organizations, the city, the chamber doing similar work. Snohomish can be that beacon for, hey, here's what it means to really figure it out for ourselves.
Right.
Put a little magic in the world.
Magic is always good.
Yeah. So tell me a little more about magic, because, there's something about magic here.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I'm going to call it out.
Well, first, I wanted you just brought up something that made me think of a book that I'm reading right now, which I would highly recommend to people who want to be able to understand others as well in the community that maybe they have a different perspective. And it's called I Never Thought of It That Way.
Ooh.
And the author is Mónica Guzmán.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a very easy to read, quick to read book, but it makes you think about your assumptions about others and sort of about this growing sort of ideological divide where people are having a harder time crossing that divide, and how you can actually take the responsibility to be one of those people that tries to cross that divide. So
Yes.
thought I'd bring that up. So I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Tell me about magic.
So magic is my cute name for a group of advisors, which you are one.
I am.
So I really wanted to try to fully welcome in the input from people who have self-identified in the community as wanting to work on issues of equity and inclusion. And so I named the group the Mayor's Advisory Group for Inclusion and Community. So that's magic.
Yes.
And so it's a number of people that for the past few years have stated that they know that there are some concerns with access for different people in the community to, power structures and to services and things like that. And they have insight into how to help our community, and also specifically like the mayor's office or city council can enact policies to ensure that that access is fully available.
We have people in our community who really want to do the work, who may understand how to access, and for that group to come together to look at ways that we can make it more systematized.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think about my journey to get to where I am now, and I'm going to ask you about your journey in a minute. But but I think about, as I mentioned, the concerns I had graduating high school, and there was an expectation in my house that I was going to go to college. And so I went to college, but then when I got to college, I wasn't really ready for college. And so I'm like, well, I can't stop, got to do something. So then to go into the military and figure that out and get out of the military and then try to figure out, okay, so how do I now take classes in the military? How do I, enroll in school now as an adult? What does that look like? Being in your 30s and here are these teenagers on a college campuses, and all right, kiddo, it was just a really different vibe. And then, also to be in your 30s applying for scholarships. And there wasn't some counselor sitting next to me, walking me through it. And my mom's clear across country in Georgia. We did have some helpful advisors at the college. But how often do people really know, hey, you can go to that advisor and ask those questions, or, to print off the course descriptions and the checklist for the courses that you need for the next program. As I was telling somebody that I did those things, and maybe I learned it in the military, learned it from mom, but it's like, you didn't lay this out. You didn't know what was coming.
Yeah.
So how do we provide that information to people so they know? And that's where I think magic comes in handy, where it's like, here are some people who want to do this and can work to be allies for folks as they move forward.
Right. I think one of the things that's really valuable in having the insight from other people that are wanting to do the work is that they've thought about some of the sort of assumptions that sort of the broader or majority, groups of the community have about how things work. And talking about your college experience, right? There were certain things that are just assumed that
right,
and you had to figure it out. And I went through that too. I'm first person in my family to go to college, right? And my family didn't know anything about what needed to happen. So, I did all the financial aid forms and scholarships and all that stuff. I just figured it out.
Right.
You have to, right? And I wonder about the different things that maybe I didn't end up having access to because I wasn't aware of it. Because if you've gone to college before, then you know that you have to do these steps to make stuff happen, right? And then what you have to do to get registered and what you have to do to get housing and things like that in college. And, it was all new. But so many people that have college in their families, it's a known thing, right? It's this sort of undercurrent of knowledge and access that is available to them, and other people don't have that knowledge and access. And so those are the types of hidden things that a group like Magic can address, is like, if we're doing something as a policy here in the city, somebody who is more aware of the impact of that policy or the lack of something for access for people can point out, did you realize that there's this group that this doesn't work for? And we can then address it. So it's a blind spot for us, but someone else can point that out.
Yeah, because if we haven't had to experience that, we wouldn't even know what the need is.
Right.
There was one time, this is when I was in Puyallup, but I remember going into the library and I saw on the bulletin board all these different resources about financial literacy, some other things about things for the homeless. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is cool. I did not know those things were in place.
Yeah.
Because at that time, it wasn't a need that I had.
Yeah.
But then the question also arises, are the people who are in need of those aware, hey, you can go to the library and it's right there.
Yeah.
Or you can go to this other resource and it's right there. Where's our communication with that?
Right. And I think that's something that we need to be more out with information like that and destigmatize it.
Oh,
right.
Right.
And I have to give kudos to Everett Community College, because if you go on campus, everywhere they have flyers about, we have a food bank and it's open these times. We have a clothing bank and it's open these times. Do you need money for whatever? Do you need this and that? Are you behind on your rent? Do you want help? Those kind of flyers are everywhere across campus. So you don't have to go like to a resource center. You don't have to go and say, I'm in need. You can just be walking by and you will see it. And it destigmatizes the fact that there are many people that are in need of stuff like that. And I think that that's an important way to think about increasing access for people, not making it so it's an additional hurdle or additional barrier or additional burden for them to be able to access it. They're already burdened. They already have barriers. They're already trying to get over those hurdles. What can we do to break that all down?
And, still jumping back on the psychology aspect for a moment, I just think it's so interesting because when I think about equity, meeting the needs of others, it seems like people may be hesitant to engage in that if they feel like they haven't received support. Does that make sense? So,
yeah, I mean, I can see that.
Yeah. Not justifying it, you know, but it's like, well, I had to do this for myself, so they should, I shouldn't just hand it to them. Yeah. And it's like, oh, like that's.
Yeah. And there's this whole issue of deserving or not deserving.
Oh, right.
Every person deserves to have a place to lay their head at night that's safe and secure. Every person deserves to have food. Every person deserves to feel safe.
Yes.
People don't have to somehow earn that right as a human being.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I love how you're a stair-stepping Maslow's hierarchy there. like, hey, you got air, food, water,
exactly,
safety, security, and we get the sense of belonging, but those are the things. If someone doesn't have their basic needs met, then we end up in a situation where they don't feel like they belong or that they're supported. And so when I think about concerns with drug addiction or suicide, where there doesn't seem to be another pathway because these needs aren't being met. And people, I'm not saying people don't want to support people because there's so many organizations and people that are out there, but making sure we just have those connections.
Yeah. I like that you brought up Maslow's hierarchy because going back to the psychology there.
Right. See?
But I mean, if you think about it, what's the top of that pyramid is, self-actualization. Right. Right. And people are always expecting people who are struggling at those lower levels, that base of that pyramid, to somehow be able to have, planning and forward thinking and actually doing things to better themselves rather than just reacting to sort of the pain and the stress and stuff that they're dealing with right now. And, we're all different. So we all react differently too. So
for sure.
I can't judge if somebody else reacts to stress, by getting really, really angry, and another person reacts by shutting down and getting depressed or whatever. That's just how they react. So I'm not going to judge that. And I also feel that that's where caring and empathy and stuff somehow gets pushed aside when we start judging people for what may be a completely natural reaction to what they're actually dealing with. But we haven't taken the time to understand exactly what they're dealing with.
Right. And that's one of the things for me when I think back to working as a behavior interventionist. I'm not going to judge you, but I want to understand the root cause of your behavior.
Yeah.
It was like, why is this something that's a trigger for you? Why does this upset you in this way? I'm not saying that it's wrong. And in being upset as a response, is that what's going to help you get to where you need to be? Or are you even thinking that clearly of a pathway to some sort of reward or consequence?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I do want to ask you, because I think this is the second episode in a row that we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it just lines up in equity and belonging. But are you familiar with the Blackfoot hierarchy?
No.
Hey, all right.
At least I don't think so.
So I remember, and I'm just going to be like real here for a second.
Okay. I like when you're real. I like when people are real.
Not that I wasn't like, not.
No, I know. Yeah, you're like always real.
I'm always real. Yeah.
Always real.
Well, anyway, I remember years ago when I first learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or probably like the second or third time, because I didn't pay attention in psychology at Georgia State. But when I actually learned about it and it resonated, I remember sharing it with somebody because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And they're like, well, you do know that Maslow's hierarchy isn't the only one. And I'm like, wait, what? And it's like, well, there's the pyramid from the Blackfoot Nation. And I'm like, oh, and they're like, well, he got that from them. But the thing that I struggle with, and this is what I'm saying, being real about it, is to have a conversation with somebody and they seem to be really like condescending to me and talking down to me, belittling me because I wasn't aware of this other piece of information. Yeah. And it's like, it's just something I don't know. Can you help me to grow? Right. As opposed to like, being negative about it. So, but whenever I talk about Maslow's hierarchy and those basic needs, I always want to reference that hierarchy because I feel it really speaks to the work that I'm trying to do, because it's amazing to have someone with their needs met, and there's the self-actualization, and then there's even a higher level that says transcendence. And it's like, right.
We should all get there.
I know, right? But then the image next to it is the Blackfoot hierarchy, where self-actualization is the bottom of that pyramid. Huh. Right. And so to think about...
That is a very different worldview.
It is. Yeah. But to think about self-efficacy evolving into collective efficacy, the next layer is community actualization. And so imagine everyone in the community showing up and contributing. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay. So we're really taking care of each other, meeting our needs as complete individuals, as a community. And the top of that hierarchy is cultural perpetuity. Yeah. Okay. And this is on my school district website, because when people ask me, it's like, what's your vision? I'm like, cultural perpetuity. Is what we're doing sustainable for all of the members of our community? If it's not, we need to continue to ask those questions, And so I'm glad we got on the top of Maslow to share that information, because what can we do to have cultural perpetuity in our community of Snohomish and beyond?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that answer is going to be different for everybody.
Absolutely.
And it's good to think about the fact that there's all these different definitions.
But, I think that takes us back to affordable housing, because that was something I mentioned to you as we were preparing for this episode, because I'll speak for myself. I live in Mukilteo, and I remember maybe 2 years ago or so, I thought I was going to look at a house, but like the median home price was like in the mid 800,000s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
and I live alone, and I make a decent salary, but I don't make a $800,000 mortgage on my own type of salary. And so when we talk about a sense of belonging and meeting needs and affordable housing, what can be done? Because the prices, they aren't going down. And then interest rates are, in that same ballpark.
Yeah.
It's a tough spot.
Yeah. We're trying to work on that right now. There's only so much we can do as a governmental agency, right? Because primarily housing is built by, private developers.
Right.
To get truly affordable housing, you do have to have now governmental intervention, because it usually would require something like the government donates some land and then a nonprofit builds some housing. And that's the only way to make it pencil out, really. Before, if you look at our historic district here, there's all kinds of different houses interspersed. Like there's apartments, there's, places that would have been considered boarding houses with like single rooms to rent and stuff like that. That's all interspersed in with these big mansions. And that's just how living was, back during that time that all of that housing was built. And that actually is more equitable in terms of mixing different socioeconomic levels and stuff like that. And it's actually more beneficial for the community as a whole. I would like to see more stuff like that because it obviously worked. Researchers have looked at access to opportunity, access to connection and community. Having that kind of interspersed housing is actually very important for that. Instead of these, clusters of well-to-do houses and then like apartments, it's that just segregates people really economically. But we are also working on our comprehensive plan, which is a 20-year plan out. And we're analyzing the information that we have on what are the income levels for the town. And that's actually an interesting question because our town, like the houses are also expensive, but the jobs in town are not jobs that would pay for those houses. So you're looking at, it's like 96 to 98% of the jobs in town are staffed by people that come from out of town.
So interesting.
Because there are a lot of service level jobs and things like that, and they just aren't going to cover an $800,000 house. Right. So it's interesting to look at what kind of housing do we need to plan for, and do we want to keep having people traveling to work and increasing the traffic and all of that, or do we want to try to accommodate the people that work in town by producing housing or allowing for housing that actually can be, affordable?
Well, that's one of my things too. When I think about all the events that we both attend around town,
I see you all the time.
and there are some times, I'm not gonna lie, where like if it's Thursday and there's something happening like the art walk that's after my work day, it's like, do I like get on the trestle and head home, or do I stay? Because sometimes you're just ready to go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be able to live in a community like this is pretty powerful if we really want to, create that sense of community. But I can see where it's difficult to have that if people can't afford to live somewhere. And so the people working here, they're gone, or they have no ties to the people who are living here other than if they're a frequent customer or client.
And you're thinking about the people that are living in these homes, they're starting to age, up, right? And then people are coming here after having had a lifetime of income to then purchase a house to retire in. They're kind of pushing out all that younger group of people because they can't find affordable places to live here because they're just starting out in their careers. They don't have that kind of income yet. And a lot of the people that are working in the service here on First Street, they're younger as well. So how are we ensuring a good mix of ages and demographics in our town if we are just pushing those people to live elsewhere?
Right. That's why we do the work we do, right?
That's right. I mean, we try to think about these things and say, hey, someone should do something about that. Maybe it's me.
Yes. So I'm holding down the schools. You're holding down local government.
I'm not holding it down, lifting it up.
Hey, all right. I love that perspective. All right. We lift here.
We lift.
I know I'm not at the end yet, but the whole end tagline is when we wise up, we rise up.
Yeah.
So,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a good saying.
I'm not holding anyone down. But speaking of that, like, can you walk us through your journey to becoming mayor?
Oh my gosh. It was very organic. I started out as a council member so before I was a council member, I was like a PTA mom, and I had a son who was a big skateboarder. And there was a rumor that the skate park was going to be torn down or something because they were tearing down the pool that was right by it. And so obviously these kids that live just for skateboarding really wanted to protect that park. So about a dozen or so of them got together and went to the city council. And I said, I will go there and be your parental support. And I was just really amazed at how the city council really listened to them and were encouraging them to speak up and really wanted to hear what they had to say. And that made me feel like, I could actually make sure that the kids' interests are protected. So told the kids, I know you can't come to all these meetings and you probably don't want to anyway because they're really long and boring, but I will go and make sure that when an opportunity arises where someone needs to bring your voices forward again in the conversation, I'll do that. So I started going to council meetings and park board meetings, and there was a committee for the skate park and the pool planning. And I just kept going and speaking up on behalf of the kids. And
that's awesome.
A former council member eventually approached me and said, you should run for city council. And I said, absolutely not. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. And she kept approaching me and I kept saying no. And then I started thinking about it. It just kind of tickled the back of my brain. And I was looking into, what's it take to run? And I saw this statistic that said it takes a woman being asked 7 times before she'll run for office. Oh, wow. It's actually decreased now, which is good overall. But so when she asked me the 6th time, I said yes, because I said, I'm not going to be an average statistic. And so I ran and I got on council and I did that for 4 years. And I was council president for 2 years. And then everybody came to me again and said, you should run for mayor. And I said, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. And well, here I am.
Those worst ideas, they'll get you every time.
I don't know why I don't trust my own judgment on these things. I don't know.
Well, I still recall, even for myself, almost 4 years ago now. Oh, has it been that long? Anyway.
Yeah.
But the question.
You first heard of us in 2020.
Yes. Yes. When I said I would never come to Snohomish. Exactly. And then they're like, well, come to Snohomish. And I'm like, wait, what?
So it was a very similar experience for you, I'm hearing.
Right. Yeah. And here we are.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad you're here also.
Thanks.
What would you say have been some of your biggest successes in your role with the mayor and city council?
Oh, gosh. I would say when I've heard from people in the community that they finally feel seen in this community. I would say that would be my number one success. Because think about that. If you're living in a community for decades and you have never felt like you belonged here.
Right.
I mean, you own a house here, you raise your kids here, and yet you still never felt like you belong. What? That's just wrong.
It is. Yeah. And I feel like I have to echo that too. And it just really landed with me a certain way when you said it, because I've heard it from people and I'm not from Snohomish. I don't even live in Snohomish. I work here, but to have those conversations with people to say that they finally feel seen, heard, and valued, and they've lived here for 20, 30 years or so or more. And it's like, whoa. It
kind of made me tear up like the first time I heard that. And then every time since I've been, when people have said, thank you, I finally feel comfortable here. I finally feel that I belong. I'm like, thank you for letting me know. And it's just joy then, but yes, the very first time I heard it, I just tears, I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So I'll have to plug the podcast for a second here.
Yeah.
Your greatest success is that you've created spaces where people belong. Hey, that's awesome. So now we got to flip it. What about challenges? What have been some of your big challenges with your role?
Well, I guess on the flip side is some people still continue to say those people don't belong or feel like us trying to make space for other people somehow takes space away from them. That's really challenging because you have to acknowledge and understand where people are coming from with that. And I get it. I really do. I mean, I actually come from a really, I would say, sort of closed-minded family. And so I understand their fears, right? I mean, because it's kind of a fear-based thing. So trying to be empathetic for those viewpoints is a challenge, but I also think that it's necessary. It's necessary to respect that people have different understandings of the dynamics of these types of changes, but also trying to understand how to respect tradition and history and all those great things without encasing in amber these sort of old attitudes, allowing for new attitudes and new belongings within that historical tradition.
For sure. Yeah.
It's a fine line to walk.
It is. And, when I think about a community like Snohomish, born in the inner city, moved out to the suburbs. And so I'm more of a fan of that quieter, slower life, but where we moved out to, there wasn't the community like here in Snohomish. So it's like, imagine trying to think of what could be even comparable around here. Cause I mean, it wasn't too far outside of town, but you couldn't just like walk to different places. You had to get in the car.
Yeah.
And so this is a place where I really appreciate the community amenities. Let's put it that way. Right. And when you think about being here in the historic district and, these buildings that have been around since the 1800s and a lot of the history and traditions, it's like, oh yeah, I totally honor and respect that. Knowing at the same time, if I was walking up these streets in the 1800s, like how would that have played out? So, but now that we're in 2024, can we ensure that we're creating welcoming and supportive spaces for everybody?
Yeah. In June, we're going to have our second Pride Parade.
Yes.
And the first one actually led to like record-setting sales, right?
I
down
heard
here.
that, yes.
So, I mean, think about that. We made space for people to come, maybe didn't feel comfortable living before. And that actually led to an economic boom for that day.
Right.
So it benefits everybody.
It
People
absolutely
feel
does.
good. People, want to spend money. People want to come and visit our town. It gives us a good reputation, in the world. Because I definitely have heard that from people too, that they haven't wanted to come here because of some past stories that they've heard. And I'm hoping that we're changing that image now, and that more people are going to feel like, yeah, Snohomish would be a great place to go and visit for the weekend or possibly live. And, it's a welcoming, loving place. That's what I hope people start thinking of it as.
You read my next question.
I did.
Because it was basically like, what's something that you would like to see in the future in this community?
That's definitely it. I definitely want anybody and everybody to feel like, yeah, Snohomish has open arms for them. And we want to see them, get to know them, welcome them in.
Okay, so could I quote you as saying, you want Snohomish to feel at home-ish?
I want Snohomish to feel at home-ish, and I want everybody in Snohomish to feel at home-ish.
That's perfect. So we're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon, but I do want to ask you this question. Where do you feel we are currently as a community? Because I think about being newer, and this is the end of my third year in the district.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I don't feel like I have a lot that I can compare it to other than what I saw and then what I get from conversations with people outside of here. But I also acknowledge, I've said this before, where I feel I have positional privilege, where I'm on the superintendent's cabinet. I'm not a small guy. The people don't tend to approach me with, hey, I don't like what you're saying. I'm like, I'm going to say it. And here's why I'm going to say it, you know. But it's like from your perspective and your time as you've been in this community, where do you feel we are?
I would say we have made incremental progress.
Okay.
I think that, you know, there's some people that really want to, like I said earlier, keep pulling us sort of back to an older vision of what Snohomish is. But I think that, especially with housing cost it is and the people that can afford it, they're coming from, you know, Bellevue and Redmon and, you know, the technology centers basically coming here. So that's changing the sort of the tenor of the town, right? And with that comes new ways of thinking too. So I think that it's just naturally, like in the long scheme of how a town develops, it's just naturally developing to be a little more inclusive because we're getting different people coming in. And I think that we did learn some painful lessons, you know, back in 2020, that there was the kind of unrest we had here in town. And I think that it peeled back some layers, allowed people to look at it. Unfortunately, that's painful when you do that. And so we've tried to heal some of that pain. And I think that that has been a growing learning experience that has actually ended up bringing some people even closer together. So I think we're on the right track. So I don't know if we can expect to ever be fully, you know, there, like, you know, self-actualized or community actualized or cultural perpetuity, right? I don't know that we can get all the way there because maybe that's an unattainable goal. But I think that we are moving in that direction.
That's beautiful. Thank you. My final question for you. Are you ready?
I'm like biting my fingernails.
I know, right? But this is one that I've started as of the last couple episodes because, you know, the name of the podcast is At Home-ish, creating spaces where we belong. And so it's like, what is it that makes you feel most at home?
I would say the laughter of good friends.
Oh, yes. As you know, as the host of the podcast, I asked you the question. And I'm like, no one's asked me that. And I'm like, I wonder what I would say when if that came back to me. But mine is similar, actually.
Yeah.
Because I just love seeing the smiles on people's faces, the glow in their eyes, where it's like, hey, it's Will, it's Linda, it's Trent over there behind the monitors. But it's like
doing the technical work today.
Right. To have those connections and just like, I saw a quote and I actually posted it on social media recently, but it was saying freedom. I'm going to mess up the quote, but it was like freedom is about not having fear. So to think about just being able to go through life and enjoying everyone and everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I hope anybody who's in Snohomish is to go through life without fear. And, you know, when we have our festivals and stuff all summer long, hopefully that we get to see all those smiles of our neighbors, you know, here.
For sure.
Enjoying being in community together.
Right. I think back to the first block party I attended, and that's where I met you, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
And based on what had transpired in the community a year prior, my head was on a swivel where I'm looking around like, okay, who's here? What's going on? And, you know, jamming the Sir Mix-a-Lot at the same time, but it's still like is this cool here? You know, and you know, everything was fine. Yeah. But because of what had happened previously, there was that concern. Yeah. And I would just say over maybe the past year and a half, that's gotten much lighter as I've been more connected with people and walk into spaces and people know who I am just when I'm walking around. I'm like, hey, okay, I feel welcome. I feel supported, you know, and it feels like that with the work that I'm doing, people want to move things forward. So.
And I think you're a good emissary in the community for moving the work forward because, as you've said, you know, when you talk to people about, you know, equity issues or inclusion, you don't put it in words that make people sort of react. The way you talk about it, it just makes sense. Right. And so people don't get defensive about it. And I think that you have a very special skill in doing
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you for doing that in the community.
I appreciate hearing that. So thank you, Mayor Redmon, for joining us for episode 10 of the At Homish podcast, Creating Spaces Where We Belong. And you do such a wonderful job of that. I think a major takeaway from our conversation that we can't overlook is to put ourselves in positions where we can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
There may be times in our lives where, there's no way I'm going to Snohomish. There's no way I'm running for office.
Mm-hmm.
And, never say never. Take advantage of those opportunities to show up and make a difference in the world. I want to remind everyone to please go to the website, homish.us, where you can access all episodes, all 10 episodes of the podcast.
Yay!
You can order merch through our website. You can access me,
Yes.
for any sort of consulting or leadership conversations to help you and your organization work to create spaces where we belong. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for tuning in. Like, share, comment, all that good stuff.
All that.
As always, when we wise up, we rise up. Peace out.